Rain hammered against the dirty windows of the Rusty Nail, a bar that smelled of cheap alcohol and broken dreams. Ryan Foster sat in the darkest corner, three small faces pressed close to him in the cramped booth. His hand rested near his weapon, eyes scanning every person who walked through the door. The children were quiet, too quiet for their ages. Lily, the oldest at 9 years, had feathers mixed with her dark hair. Her arms showed patches of scales that caught the dim light. Pedro, 7 years old, had skin that shifted between human tan and reptilian green depending on his mood. Right now it was definitely green. Finn, barely 5, had webbed fingers that he kept hidden under the table. All three carried the marks of being different in a galaxy that hated different. Ryan had found them 3 weeks ago in a cargo container, drugged and bound for some rich collector's private zoo. He'd killed 4 traffickers that night and hadn't slept well since. Not because of the killing. That part was easy. The hard part was figuring out what to do with 3 traumatized children who nobody wanted. The door burst open. Ryan's hand moved to his gun, but he stopped when he saw her. She was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, with scales that shimmered deep purple and blue in the poor lighting. Wings, folded tight against her back, scraped the doorframe as she stumbled inside. Blood dripped from a gash on her shoulder. Her yellow eyes swept the room with the intensity of a cornered predator. Cavallara had once commanded armies. Now she commanded nothing but her own desperate flight from assassins who wanted her family's power erased from history. The coup had been swift and brutal. Her father dead. Her mother executed publicly. Her siblings scattered or slaughtered. She alone had escaped the homeworld, and barely. 3 figures entered behind her. Not police. Worse. Bounty hunters, the kind who didn't care about bringing targets back alive. Cavallara's hand went to her blade, but she was exhausted. The wound in her shoulder slowed her movements. She might take one down. Maybe 2 if she was lucky. But 3? Ryan made a decision in half a heartbeat. He stood, pushing the children lower into the booth. His voice was quiet. Stay down. Don't move. His first shot took the lead bounty hunter in the knee. The man went down screaming. The second shot hit the woman on the left in her weapon hand, sending her gun clattering across the floor. The third hunter was faster, diving behind the bar and returning fire. Cavallara didn't waste the opportunity. She lunged forward, her blade finding the wounded woman's chest. The hunter dropped without a sound. Ryan was already moving, flanking around tables while the remaining hunter focused on Cavallara. When the man popped up to shoot, Ryan put 2 rounds through his chest. Silence fell over the bar, broken only by the groaning of the knee-shot hunter. The bartender, a 6-armed alien who'd seen too many fights to care, simply started cleaning glasses. Cavallara stared at Ryan, chest heaving, blood dripping from her blade. "Why did you help me?" Ryan didn't answer immediately. He walked to the wounded hunter and knocked him unconscious with the butt of his gun. Then he looked at Cavallara properly. She was warrior-built, dangerous, and clearly noble-born despite the dirt and blood. Her scales were too fine, her bearing too proud even in defeat. "You need to disappear," Ryan said, his voice rough from years of smoking and shouting orders. "I need help." Cavallara's eyes narrowed. "Help? I am Cavallara of House." "I don't care about your house," Ryan interrupted. He gestured toward the booth where 3 small faces now peeked over the edge. "I need someone who can fight. Someone who can protect them when I can't be there." Cavallara looked at the children. Her expression shifted from confusion to recognition to something like disgust. "Hybrids."
"You want me to nursemaid mongrel children?"
Ryan's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "I want someone capable to keep them alive while I take jobs that pay enough to feed us all. You need a place to hide and resources to survive. We both need what the other has. I was nobility. I commanded thousands." "How you were," Ryan cut in, past tense. "Right now you're bleeding in a dive bar with a price on your head and nowhere to go. I'm offering you survival. You don't have to like it. You just have to consider it." Cavallara's pride warred with her desperation. The children stared at her with wide eyes. The boy with webbed fingers started crying softly. The sound seemed to crack something in her hardened expression. "I know nothing of caring for younglings," she admitted, her voice dropping. "You know how to fight. You know how to plan. You know how to survive." Ryan holstered his weapon. "That's more than most. The rest we figure out as we go." Sirens wailed in the distance. The bartender gave Ryan a meaningful look. "Time to leave." Ryan extended his hand. "My ship leaves in 10 minutes. You're welcome to come. No obligation beyond helping with the kids while you heal and plan your next move. Food, shelter, safety. In exchange for your skills, Kavalara looked at his hand. In her culture, such a gesture sealed bonds of honor. If she took it, she would be bound by her word. But what choice did she have? Pride or survival? Heritage or pragmatism? She gripped his hand. Her scaled palm was warm and strong. I accept. Temporarily. Temporarily, Ryan agreed, though something in his gut told him neither of them believed that word. He gathered the children quickly. Lily took his left hand. Pedro took his right. Finn clung to Lily's shirt. Kavalara followed them out into the rain, her wings spreading slightly to shield the children from the downpour. They ran through dark alleys toward the spaceport, an unlikely group bound by desperation and the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, they could keep each other alive long enough to find something better. The long shot. Ryan's battered cargo ship waited in Bay 17. It wasn't much. Dented hull, outdated engines, barely legal weapon systems, but it was home. As they boarded and Ryan fired up the engines, Kavalara stood in the cargo hold, watching the three children huddle together on a pile of blankets. They looked so small, so vulnerable. She had thought her purpose died with her house. Perhaps she was wrong. Ryan's voice crackled over the intercom. Strap in. We're leaving Atmo in 30 seconds. Kavalara helped the children into seats, her large hands surprisingly gentle as she fastened their harnesses. Lily looked up at her with those strange human avian eyes. Thank you, the girl whispered. Kavalara said nothing, but as the ship lifted off and the gravity shifted, she stayed close to them, her wing extending slightly to brace them against the acceleration. Maybe temporary was enough to start with. The stars awaited. Dust rose in clouds as the longshot touched down on the landing pad. Ryan's safe house sat 5 miles from anything resembling civilization, surrounded by red rock formations and scrub vegetation that somehow survived in the harsh climate. It wasn't pretty, but it was remote. Remote meant safe. Kavalara descended the ramp and stared at the structure before her. Calling it a house was generous. It looked more like a military bunker that someone had half-heartedly tried to make livable. Metal walls, narrow windows reinforced with security mesh, and a single door that had seen better decades. This is where you expect me to stay? Her voice dripped with disbelief. Ryan was already unloading supply crates. It's got power, running water, and walls thick enough to stop most weapons. Luxury comes later. Right now we need secure. The children filed out behind them, looking small and lost in the vast emptiness of the landscape. Finn immediately started crying. Pedro's skin flashed through several shades of green and gray. Only Lily seemed to maintain composure, though her feathers ruffled with anxiety. Kavalara felt something twist in her chest. She didn't know what to do with crying children. Ryan handled it efficiently. He knelt down, spoke in low tones, and within minutes had Finn calm enough to walk. It was the gentleness that surprised Kavalara. This man who'd killed 3 hunters without hesitation treated these younglings like they were made of glass. Inside, the safe house was spartanly furnished. 4 sleeping rooms, a common area, a kitchen that looked military grade, and a weapons locker that dominated one entire wall. Ryan showed Kavalara to her room. It contained a bed, a storage locker, and nothing else. Home sweet home, he muttered, then went to settle the children. That first week was chaos. Kavalara had never prepared food for children. Her meals consisted of whatever could be caught and cooked quickly. She served the younglings raw meat, assuming all species ate as hers did. Pedro vomited. Finn refused to eat. Lily politely explained that humans needed their food cooked. Ryan returned from a supply run to find Kavalara standing in the kitchen, surrounded by burnt pots and 3 hungry children. He said nothing, just took over and made something edible. Kavalara retreated to her room, pride stinging worse than any wound. The children didn't make it easier. They woke screaming from nightmares. They refused to bathe. They fought over toys that Ryan had salvaged from who knows where. Pedro bit Kavalara when she tried to separate him from Finn during an argument. She nearly bit back before remembering these were younglings, not warriors. Ryan took jobs locally, short runs that kept him away only hours at a time. He was testing her, Kavalara realized, seeing if she would stay, seeing if she could handle the responsibility. She almost left 3 times that first week. What stopped her was the memory of running, of having nowhere to go, of being alone. The second week, things shifted slightly. Lily approached Kavalara while the dragon woman was checking the perimeter sensors.
Can you teach me to fly?
The girl asked. Kavalara looked down at the child's small wings, barely developed, more decoration than function. You're too young. Your wings aren't strong enough. But you could teach me exercises to make them stronger? There was such hope in those strange eyes. Kavalara found herself nodding before she knew what she was doing. They spent an hour doing wing stretches and strengthening movements. Lily laughed when Kavalara demonstrated a particularly difficult pose and fell over. It was the first time Kavalara had heard any of the children laugh. That night, Pedro asked if Kavalara could teach him to hunt. His reptilian heritage gave him certain instincts, he explained shyly. Ryan didn't know how to help him understand those parts of himself. Kavalara took him outside and showed him how to track, how to move silently, how to read the signs of prey. Pedro's skin rippled with excitement, colors shifting rapidly. For the first time, he seemed proud of what he was. Even Finn, the smallest, began leaving drawings near Kavalara's door. Crude pictures of the family, always with Kavalara's wings spread protectively over everyone. Ryan noticed the changes. He found Kavalara one evening, watching the sunset from the roof of the safe house. He climbed up and sat beside her without speaking for several minutes. "You're good with them," he finally said. Kavalara snorted. "I'm adequate, barely. You're still here. That's more than adequate." She turned to look at him. His face was weathered, scarred, the kind of face that had seen too much violence. But his eyes were kind when he talked about the children. "Why did you take them?" she asked. "You could have left them in that container. Called authorities. Let them become someone else's problem." Ryan was quiet for a long time. "I was in the war. The big one, 20 years back. Humans versus the coalition. I did things I'm not proud of. Killed people who didn't deserve it because I was following orders." He paused. "When I found those kids, I saw a chance to do something right. Maybe it doesn't balance the scales, but it's something." Kavalara understood that. "I commanded forces that burned villages. We called it necessary, strategic. Now I wonder how many younglings died because of my orders." "Can't change the past," Ryan said simply. "Can only try to do better going forward." They sat in companionable silence as the twin moons rose over the red rocks. The third week, Ryan took a longer job. 3 days delivering sensitive cargo to a settlement on the far side of the continent. He hesitated before leaving, clearly worried. "I can manage 3 days," Kavalara said, more confidently than she felt. He gave her the security codes, showed her the emergency protocols, and made her promise to call if anything went wrong. Then he was gone, and Kavalara was alone with 3 hybrid children in the middle of nowhere. The first day went smoothly. The second day, Pedro and Finn got into a serious fight that left Finn with a bloody nose and Pedro locked in his room sobbing. Kavalara handled it, though not gracefully. She had no idea how to comfort crying younglings or mediate disputes that weren't solved with combat. The third day, just before dawn, the perimeter alarms screamed. Kavalara was up instantly, weapons in hand. She saw them on the security screens. 6 raiders, heavily armed, approaching the safe house from multiple angles. They must have been watching, waiting for Ryan to leave. She had 30 seconds before they breached the outer walls. Kavalara moved on instinct. She woke the children, told them to hide in the shelter room Ryan had showed her, a reinforced chamber beneath the house. Lily started to argue. Kavalara's voice turned harsh. "Go! Now! Protect your brothers!" The girl obeyed. Kavalara sealed them inside and went to war. The raiders expected an easy target. They found something else. Kavalara met the first 2 at the main door, her blade taking one in the throat before he could raise his weapon. The second got a shot off that scored her shoulder, but she powered through the pain and broke his neck with her bare hands. The third and fourth came through windows. Kavalara's wings spread wide, blocking their line of fire as she charged. Her tail, thick and muscular, swept one raider's legs out from under him. She crushed his skull before he could recover. The fourth managed to wound her leg, but she caught him with her claws, tearing through his armor like paper. The last 2 were smarter. They held back, trying to flank her. Kavalara was bleeding from multiple wounds now, slowing down. She could feel her strength fading. One raider aimed at the door to the shelter room. Something primal ignited in Kavalara. These were her younglings down there. Not by blood, but by choice. By the promises she'd made. even if only to herself. She roared, a sound that shook the metal walls, and threw herself at both raiders with absolute abandon. Her blade found one's heart. Her teeth found the other's throat. She didn't stop until both were dead and she was certain no more threats existed. Then she collapsed, bleeding heavily, and waited. Ryan found her there 6 hours later. The children had called him the moment the alarm stopped. He'd broken every speed law getting back. Kavalara was unconscious but alive. The children were unharmed, still locked in the shelter room. Ryan carried Kavalara to her bed and treated her wounds with steady hands. The children watched from the doorway, silent. When she woke 2 days later, Lily was asleep in a chair beside her bed. Pedro and Finn were curled up on the floor nearby. Ryan sat in the corner, cleaning his weapons. "You stayed," Ryan said quietly. "You fought for them." Kavalara's throat was dry. "Of course I fought. They're mine to protect." Ryan smiled slightly. "Yeah, they are. Something had changed. This wasn't temporary anymore." Kavalara understood that now. She'd shed blood for these younglings. She'd nearly died for them. They were no longer an obligation. They were family. 3 months had passed since Kavalara fought off the raiders. Her wounds had healed, leaving new scars that she wore without shame. The safe house had been repaired and reinforced. More importantly, something like routine had developed. Lily practiced her wing exercises every morning with Kavalara. Pedro hunted small creatures in the scrubland, learning to honor his reptilian nature. Finn had started talking more, his voice growing stronger as fear loosened its grip. Ryan took jobs, came home, and the children ran to greet him every time like he'd been gone for years instead of days. They were running low on supplies. That meant a trip to Crossroads, the nearest settlement large enough to have proper markets. Ryan had avoided it until now, but they needed things the supply runs couldn't provide: fresh food, medical supplies, clothes that actually fit the growing children. "Stay close," Ryan told the children as they walked through the dusty streets of Crossroads. "Don't talk to strangers. If anything feels wrong, you come straight back to me or Kavalara." The settlement was a mix of species, though humans dominated. Prefabricated buildings lined streets that had never quite been properly paved. Ships came and went from the landing field, bringing traders and trouble in equal measure. Kavalara towered over most of the crowd, her scales catching sunlight and drawing stares. The children drew different looks. Uncomfortable ones. Disapproving ones. Some people whispered. Others turned away like the sight of hybrid younglings offended them. Lily's feathers flattened against her head. Pedro's skin went dull gray. Finn grabbed Kavalara's clawed hand and wouldn't let go. They made it through 2 shops without major incident. The third shop, a general supplier, was where things went wrong. The shopkeeper was a heavy-set human man with cold eyes. He watched them enter, his expression hardening when he saw the children. Ryan approached the counter with a list of needed items. "We need medical supplies, preserved food rations, and children's clothing," Ryan said, keeping his voice neutral. The shopkeeper didn't even look at the list. "We don't serve their kind here." He jerked his chin toward the children. Ryan's jaw tightened. "They're children. They need clothes and food like any other child. They're abominations. Shouldn't exist." The shopkeeper crossed his arms. "I won't profit from supporting gene mixing. It's unnatural." Kavalara felt heat rising in her chest, the kind that preceded violence. Her hand moved toward her blade. Ryan caught her eye and shook his head slightly. "Not here, not in front of the children." "Fine," Ryan said quietly. "We'll take our business elsewhere." They turned to leave. The shopkeeper's voice followed them. "Good, take those freaks somewhere else. Nobody wants them here." Kavalara's control snapped. She spun back, covering the distance to the counter in 2 strides, her hand slamming down on the surface hard enough to crack it. "You will not speak of them that way." The shopkeeper stumbled backward, suddenly pale. "I'll call security." "You can't threaten me." Ryan was already pulling Kavalara back. "Let's go. He's not worth it." They left quickly, the children quiet and withdrawn. Outside, Lily's eyes were wet with tears she refused to shed. Pedro's skin had gone so gray he looked sick. Finn had retreated into silence. Ryan knelt down to their level. "Listen to me. That man is an idiot. His opinion doesn't matter. You 3 are exactly what you should be. Perfect the way you are. Understand?" They nodded, but the damage was done. They'd heard these things before in the facility where they'd been kept. The words cut deeper coming from a free person on an open street. They found another shop that would serve them, though the service was cold and the looks weren't much better. Ryan paid quickly and they headed back toward where they'd parked the transport. That's when Kavalara saw them. Wanted posters on a public notice board. Her face stared back at her, rendered in harsh digital lines. The reward amount made her stomach turn. 500,000 credits, dead or alive. Ryan saw them too. His expression went carefully blank, the way it did when he was thinking tactically. We need to leave now. But it was too late. A voice called out from behind them. Ryan Foster. Didn't expect to find you out here in the open. Ryan turned slowly. The man approaching was tall, lean, with the easy confidence of someone who knew how to fight. He wore combat gear marked with military insignia that Ryan recognized immediately. Carter, Ryan said evenly. Been a while. Carter smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. 5 years. You look older. Hard living. Ryan positioned himself slightly in front of the children. Kavalara moved to flank them, understanding the threat instinctively. Carter's eyes flicked to the children, then to Kavalara, then back to Ryan. You've been busy. Taking on dependents now? That's not like you. People change. Yeah, they do. Sometimes not for the better. Carter's hand rested casually near his weapon. You're wanted, Ryan, you know that, right? Theft of military property. That's a capital offense. They're children, not property. They're part of a classified program. Resources the military invested billions in developing. You stole them. That makes you a criminal. Carter's voice was reasonable, almost friendly. I'm here to offer you a deal. Come in voluntarily. Return the assets. All charges get dropped. You walk away clean. Assets. He called them assets like they were equipment instead of living, breathing younglings who'd been tortured and traumatized. No deal, Ryan said flatly. Think about it. You're not young anymore. How long can you keep running? How long before someone less friendly than me finds you? Carter gestured toward Kavalara. And you're traveling with a fugitive alien noble. That bounty on her head could fund a whole colony. You're making bad choices, old friend. We're not friends. Haven't been since you decided following orders mattered more than doing what's right. Carter's expression hardened. Last chance, Ryan. Surrender the assets and the alien. Walk away from this mess. You deserve better than dying in some nowhere place protecting experiments. Ryan's hand moved to his weapon. Call them experiments again. See what happens. For a long moment, tension held everything frozen. Then Carter stepped back, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Fine, have it your way. But you need to know, I'm not the only one looking. There's a task force being assembled. Full military authorization. They'll be here within a week and they won't offer deals. They'll take the children by force and eliminate anyone who gets in the way. Let them come. Carter shook his head. You really have changed. The Ryan I knew would have seen the smart play. He turned to leave, then paused. 1 week. That's all the time you have. Use it to run far and fast because what's coming won't stop. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. The children were shaking. Kavalara's scales had darkened to near black, a sign of extreme agitation. Ryan stood very still, thinking. We need to leave this planet, Kavalara said quietly. Now, before they arrive. Agreed. But we need resources first. Identity papers, travel documents, enough credits to disappear properly. Ryan's eyes had gone distant, calculating. There's someone who can help, but the cost will be high. How high? We have to steal from someone who won't take it kindly. Back at the safe house, Ryan spread maps and data screens across the table. The children were in bed, exhausted by the day's stress. Kavalara leaned over the displays, studying the target Ryan had in mind. Victor Sloan runs the black market in this sector, Ryan explained. He deals in artifacts, information, weapons, people. His auction house in New Barium is heavily guarded but contains everything we need. Identity papers we can modify, location data on safe havens, and credits. You're suggesting we rob a crime lord. I'm suggesting we take what we need to save our family. Our family. Kavalara noticed he'd said it without hesitation. There's something else, Ryan continued. Sloan keeps a special collection. Valuable slaves, mostly political prisoners he's bought from various governments. He pulled up an image. Kavalara's breath caught. The face looking back at her was familiar. Younger than she remembered, thinner, with eyes that had seen too much suffering. But unmistakably her brother. Theron, she whispered. He's alive. He's listed in Sloane's inventory, scheduled for private auction next month. Ryan met her eyes. We could get him out. If we're going in anyway, it was manipulation. Kavalara knew that. Adding her brother to the mission made it more complicated, more dangerous. But Ryan was offering her something she thought lost forever. Family. Blood family. The children, she said. If we do this, they'll be at risk. If we don't do this, they're at risk anyway. Carter was telling the truth about that task force. We need to disappear completely, and that requires resources we don't have. Ryan's voice was steady. I won't pretend this is safe. It's not. But staying here isn't safe either. At least this way we're making a choice instead of waiting to be caught. Kavalara looked at the data again. Guard schedules. Security systems. Entry points. It was possible. Difficult, but possible. When do we go? 3 days. That gives us time to plan and prepare. We'll leave the children with someone I trust. You trust someone? Ryan almost smiled. One person. An old woman who runs an orphanage in New Barium. She's sheltered runaways before. She'll keep them safe for a few days. Kavalara nodded slowly. Then we prepare, and we bring your children and my brother home. Ryan extended his hand. Partners? Kavalara gripped it firmly. Partners. Outside, night had fallen over the red rocks. Somewhere in the darkness, threats gathered. But inside the safe house, 2 warriors planned their response. They would not run. They would not surrender. They would fight for their family. New Barium sprawled across the landscape like a metal growth, all sharp edges and flickering lights. The city thrived on trade, legal and otherwise. Victor Sloane's auction house sat in the merchant district, a building that looked respectable from the outside. What happened inside was anything but. Ryan and Kavalara had left the children with Marla, an elderly, 4-armed alien who asked no questions and gave fierce hugs. Lily had clung to Ryan before they left. You'll come back? Always, he'd promised. Now they crouched on a rooftop across from Sloane's establishment watching patterns. Guards changed shifts every 4 hours. Delivery vehicles entered through the rear. The main vault sat 3 levels down, behind enough security to stop a small army. 30 guards minimum, Kavalara observed. Military-grade sensors. Automated defenses. This won't be subtle. Doesn't have to be subtle. Just has to work. Ryan pulled up a schematic on his datapad. We go in during the auction. That's when security focuses on the main floor, protecting the merchandise and wealthy buyers. The vault will be less guarded. And your brother? Ryan's jaw tightened. Theron will be backstage with other slaves waiting to be shown. We get him first, then hit the vault, then leave before anyone realizes we were there. That's optimistic. That's the plan. Optimism comes later. They moved at midnight. Ryan had obtained staff uniforms through contacts he didn't explain. They entered through the service entrance, 2 workers among dozens preparing for the evening's auction. Kavalara kept her wings folded tight under a heavy cloak. Her scales were harder to hide, but in a place that catered to all species, she didn't stand out as much as she feared. The backstage area smelled of fear and expensive perfume. Slaves stood in holding cells, drugged into compliance or simply too broken to resist. Ryan and Kavalara split up. Ryan moved toward the vault level. Kavalara went hunting for Theron. She found him in the 3rd cell she checked. He'd changed. The proud warrior she remembered was gone. This person was thinner, scarred, with eyes that didn't quite focus. Compliance drug addiction. She'd seen it before in prisoners of war. Chemical chains that held better than metal. Theron, she whispered, overriding the cell lock with a stolen code. It's me, Kavalara. He looked up slowly. Recognition came in pieces. Sister, no, you're dead. They said you were dead. I'm alive. And I'm getting you out. She pulled him to his feet. He stumbled, weak from months of captivity and chemical dependency. Can you walk? I think so, maybe. His words slurred slightly. Where will we go? Somewhere safe. Trust me, an alarm blared. Not for them, Kavalara realized. Ryan's alarm. He'd triggered the vault security. They were out of time. Kavalara half-carried Theron through the corridors, moving toward their extraction point. Guards ran past them, heading toward the vault. The auction above had descended into chaos. Buyers were fleeing. Security was locking down. She reached the service bay where they'd planned to meet. Ryan wasn't there. 5 minutes passed. 10. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the building. Then Ryan appeared, running hard, a data chip clutched in one hand and a heavy bag slung over his shoulder. Blood streaked his face from a cut above his eye. 3 guards pursued him. Kvalara set Theron down and drew her blade. Go for the transport. I'll handle them. The first guard died before he could raise his weapon. The second managed a shot that scored Kvalara's shoulder before she took him down with her claws. The third was smarter, keeping his distance, trying to flank. Ryan shot him from behind. Move, Ryan shouted. They ran for the transport, a stolen cargo hauler that Ryan had positioned 2 blocks away. Theron collapsed in the back. Kvalara took the weapons position. Ryan piloted, pushing the vehicle through crowded streets as security forces mobilized. Did you get it? Kvalara asked. Got more than I expected. Ryan's voice was grim. He tossed the data chip to her. Read that when we're clear. It's important. They made it to the edge of the city before the pursuit caught up. 3 security vehicles armed and fast. Ryan took a hard turn into the industrial district. Kvalara returned fire through the rear hatch, her shots precise despite the bouncing vehicle. She hit the lead vehicle's engine. It exploded, blocking the street. The other 2 found alternate routes. This chase would continue. Ryan drove like he'd been born behind controls, sliding through gaps that shouldn't have fit their vehicle, taking turns that threatened to flip them. Kvalara kept shooting, forcing their pursuers to keep distance. They lost them in a maze of abandoned factories. Ryan didn't slow down until they were 20 miles outside the city, hidden in a canyon that shielded them from aerial detection. Everyone breathed hard. Theron was shaking, going through withdrawal already. Ryan checked their supplies, counting what they'd gained. Identity papers blank and ready for modification. Credit chips totaling enough to live comfortably for years. Location data on safe havens throughout the sector. And that data chip. Kvalara plugged it into her handheld reader, while Ryan administered what medical aid he could to Theron. What she saw made her blood run cold. The hybrid program files. Everything. The full documentation of how the military had created hybrid children, volunteer genetic samples from humans, stolen genetic material from alien species taken during diplomatic visits, medical screenings, anywhere they could acquire it, including from her clan. There were names, dates, genetic markers, and profiles on every hybrid child created in the program, including the 3 they'd rescued. Lily's profile showed genetic markers from humans and avian species, but also traces of another line, dragonkin genetic material, specifically from Kvalara's family. Her hands shook as she read. The military had stolen her clan's genetic material 5 years ago during a peace negotiation. They'd used it to create several hybrid children, mixing dragonkin traits with human and other species. Lily carried her family's blood, not enough to make them related in any traditional sense, but enough that the girl shared something fundamental with Kvalara. Enough that the protective instincts she'd been feeling had a biological component she'd never suspected. What does it say? Ryan asked, finishing with Theron and moving to sit beside her. Kvalara explained, her voice carefully controlled. Ryan listened without interrupting. Does it change anything? He asked when she finished. I don't know. Kvalara looked at the data again. I've been protecting her because I chose to. Now I find out there's a blood connection I never knew about. Does that make my choice less meaningful? No. Ryan's answer was immediate and certain. Family isn't about blood. It's about who you fight for, who you'd die for. You nearly died protecting all 3 of them before you knew any of this. That choice was real, but Lily deserves to know. She does. When we're safe, we tell her. We tell all of them the truth about where they came from. They deserve that much. He paused. But it doesn't change what we are to each other. Nothing changes that. Theron stirred in the back, mumbling incoherently. The withdrawal would get worse before it got better. They needed to get him proper medical help, somewhere they could stay long enough for him to detox safely. The files mention other children, Kvalara said, still in facilities, still being experimented on. I know. I saw. Ryan's expression was troubled. We can't save them all. Not right now. First, we have to save ourselves. It felt like failure. Kvalara had commanded armies. She'd been trained to think strategically, to prioritize missions, but the thought of leaving other younglings in those facilities aided her. Later, Ryan said, reading her expression, we save ourselves first, get strong, get established. Then we come back for the others. I promise you that. They drove through the night, heading back toward Redstone Haven, back toward the children who were waiting for them, back toward Marla's orphanage and 3 young faces that would light up when they walked through the door. When they arrived, dawn was breaking over the city. Marla opened the door, took one look at their condition, and simply ushered them inside. The children were still asleep. Ryan collapsed on a couch, exhausted. Kvalara sat beside him, equally drained. Theron lay on a cot, already asleep or unconscious, it was hard to tell. "We did it," Ryan said quietly. "We did." Kvalara felt the weight of the data chip in her pocket. So many secrets. So many truths that would hurt to reveal. But they deserved those truths. "What do we do now?" "We rest, we heal. We tell them what we found, and then we run for Whisper's Edge like our lives depend on it." "Because they do." "Because they do," Ryan agreed. Footsteps on the stairs. Lily appeared, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She saw them and her whole face transformed with joy. "You came back." She ran to them. Ryan caught her in a hug. Pedro and Finn appeared moments later, piling on. Kvalara found herself surrounded by 3 younglings, all talking at once, all needing reassurance that the adults were really there, really safe, really back. And Kvalara understood something fundamental in that moment. It didn't matter what the files said. It didn't matter what genetic connections existed or didn't exist. These 3 younglings were hers, not because of blood, but because of choice. Because she'd decided to protect them, and they'd decided to trust her. Family wasn't about genetics. It was about this. About coming home to people who needed you and whom you needed back. "Come on," Ryan said, standing with Finn in his arms. "Let's get some food in everyone. Then we have things to discuss." Kvalara rose, Lily holding her hand, Pedro pressed against her side. Theron slept on, beginning his long journey back to himself. Outside, the city woke to a new day. Forces were mobilizing against them. Dangers waited, but for now they were together. They were safe. And that would have to be enough. Because soon, very soon, they would have to run again. The smuggler's freighter stank of recycled air and unwashed bodies. Ryan had paid triple the normal rate for passage to Whisper's Edge, and even then the captain had been reluctant. Transporting fugitives was bad business. Transporting fugitives wanted by the military was suicidal. But credits talked, and desperation shouted louder. Their quarters were cramped, barely large enough for 6 people to exist without climbing over each other. One sleeping area that the children shared, another that Ryan and Kvalara took turns using while the others stayed on watch. Theron occupied a corner, sweating through withdrawal, his body fighting the chemicals that had kept him compliant for so long. They'd been in transit for 5 days. 7 more to go before they reached Whisper's Edge. 7 more days of hoping the military didn't find them first. Lily sat with Theron, reading to him from a datapad. Stories helped distract him from the pain. Pedro practiced his fighting forms in the tiny space available, his movements precise despite the restrictions. Finn drew pictures on scraps of plastic, creating art from nothing. Ryan sat against the wall, cleaning his weapons for the 3rd time that day. Kvalara understood. Idle hands meant idle minds, and idle minds remembered all the ways things could go wrong. She'd told them about the data chip, about what it revealed, about the genetic connections and stolen material. The children had taken it better than she'd expected. Lily had hugged her and said it explained why she'd felt drawn to Kvalara from the beginning. Pedro had simply shrugged and said family was who you chose. Finn had asked if this meant Kvalara was really staying forever. She'd said yes. Theron stirred, groaning. The withdrawal was entering its worst phase. His body shook with tremors. Sweat soaked his clothes. Kvalara held his hand, remembering when they'd been younglings together, before politics and war had torn everything apart. "Tell me about them," Theron whispered, his voice hoarse. "The children, why are they worth this?" Kvalara considered her answer. "Because they deserve a chance. Because the galaxy has decided they shouldn't exist, and that's wrong. Because when I look at them, I see possibility instead of mistakes. You sound different. Less like the commander I remember. I am different. That person died with our house. This person is better." Ryan's communicator buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. "We've got company. Military vessels just entered the sector." The captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "All passengers, secure yourselves. We may have to make some aggressive maneuvers." Ryan started strapping the children into crash webbing. Valara secured Theron, then herself. The freighter's engines changed pitch, acceleration pressing them into their seats. Minutes passed like hours. The ship shuddered as it dove deeper into the asteroid field they'd been using for cover. Rocks pinged off the hull. Alarms wailed. The captain was pushing the freighter harder than it was designed to go. Then everything stopped. Not the engines. The motion. They'd been caught in a tractor beam. Ryan cursed. Kavalara felt her heart sink. After everything, after coming this far, they were going to be captured before reaching safety. The intercom crackled again. "This is Colonel Hayes of the United Earth Defense Forces. Ryan Foster, I know you're aboard that vessel. Surrender yourself and the hybrid specimens, and the civilian crew will not be harmed." Specimens. They called the children specimens like they were samples in a lab instead of living beings. "What do we do?" The captain's voice came through, panicked. "I can't shake this beam. They'll board us in minutes." Ryan looked at Kavalara. She saw the calculation in his eyes. The same calculation she was making. They could fight. Take as many down as possible. But they'd lose. And the children would be taken anyway. "Ryan," Lily said quietly, "you said we get to choose our own path. That nobody gets to decide for us." He looked at her. "That's right. Then let's choose to fight together. Whatever happens." Pedro nodded. Even Finn, small and scared, straightened in his webbing. Together. Theron, despite his pain, managed a weak smile. "I just got my family back. I'm not losing them to tyrants." Kavalara felt something warm spread through her chest. Pride. Love. The knowledge that whatever came next, they faced it as a unit. "Open a channel," Ryan told the captain. The communication line activated. Ryan's voice was steady, carrying the authority of someone who'd once commanded soldiers. "Colonel Hayes, this is Ryan Foster. We both know how this ends if you board this ship. People die, maybe some of yours, definitely some of mine. Is that really what you want?" Hayes's response came quickly. "What I want is irrelevant. I have orders. Return the hybrid assets and yourself to military custody. This is your only warning. Those assets have names," Ryan said. "Lily, Pedro, Finn, they're children, Colonel. Not weapons. Not experiments, children." A pause. When Hayes spoke again, her voice was colder. "I've seen the files, Foster. I know what you're protecting. Those hybrids represent billions in research funding. They're too valuable to lose. They're too valuable to lose because they're people." Ryan shot back. "You want to know what I've seen? I've seen Lily learn to read. I've seen Pedro learn to control his abilities instead of fear them. I've seen Finn go from a terrified child who couldn't speak to a boy who laughs every day. They're not specimens. They're individuals with hopes and dreams and the right to live free." Pretty speech. It changes nothing. Kavalara leaned toward the communicator. "Colonel Hayes, this is Kavalara of the Dragonkin clans. My people's genetic material was stolen to create these children without consent. We were violated, our bodies used without permission. And yet I stand with these younglings because they are innocent of the crimes committed to bring them into existence. Will you punish them for what others did?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I have my orders," Hayes repeated, but something in her voice had shifted. "Orders can be wrong," Ryan said. "You know that. You've been in service long enough to see orders that made you question everything you believe. This is one of those times. You have a choice, Colonel. Follow orders and take 3 innocent children back to a life of experimentation and pain. Or let us go. Let them have a chance at a real life. If I let you go, I'll be court-martialed, stripped of rank, possibly imprisoned. Yes, you will. And 3 children will grow up free instead of in cages. That's the trade. Your career for their lives. Only you can decide if that's worth it." The silence stretched. The tractor beam still held them. The military ship could fire at any moment, disable their engines, board them by force. Then the beam released. Hayes's voice came through one last time. "My sensors show no fugitives in this sector. The freighter I scanned was clean. Continuing patrol." A pause. "Be better parents than the military would have been, Foster. Those children deserve that much." The channel closed. The freighter's engines engaged. They were moving again. Free. Accelerating away from the military vessel that had just let them go. Nobody spoke for several minutes. The reality of what had happened was too large to process immediately. "She let us go," Lily finally whispered. "Why?" "Because she's a good person trapped in a bad situation," Ryan said. "And she made the hard choice. Will she be okay?" Pedro asked. Probably not. But she knew that and did it anyway. Cavallara thought about Hayes, about a woman who would sacrifice her entire career, her freedom, possibly her life, to do what was right. Humanity confused her sometimes, capable of such cruelty yet also such profound sacrifice. We owe her, Cavallara said. We must make sure her sacrifice matters. We will, Ryan promised. We'll give these kids the life they deserve. We'll make sure her choice counts for something. The rest of the journey passed without incident. Theron slowly improved, his body purging the chemicals, his mind clearing. The children grew more excited as they approached their destination. Even Ryan and Cavallara felt the tension ease slightly. Whisper's Edge appeared on the sensors on the 12th day. A green and blue world, protected by ancient treaties that even the military respected. Neutral territory where fugitives could seek asylum if they made their case well enough. The spaceport was busy with ships from 100 different species. The architecture blended styles from across the galaxy. The air smelled of unfamiliar flowers and cooking from a dozen different cultures. They were met by representatives of the Neutral Council, bureaucrats whose job was to evaluate asylum requests. Ryan had prepared their case carefully, assembling evidence, documentation, testimony. The hearing took 3 days. They presented everything. The files from the military program, the genetic theft, the treatment of hybrid children, their flight from persecution, Hayes' testimony, delivered by recorded message that must have cost her everything to send. Cavallara spoke about her clan's violation. Theron, still weak but determined, testified about slavery and the black market. The children themselves spoke, Lily especially, articulating their desire to live free. On the 3rd day, the council convened in private session. Ryan and Cavallara waited outside with the children. Theron had been taken to a medical facility for proper treatment. The waiting was torture. Finally, they were called back in. The council leader, an ancient being whose species Ryan didn't recognize, spoke in a voice that carried the weight of centuries. We have reviewed your case. We find the evidence of persecution compelling. We find the treatment of these children by the military to be in violation of several interspecies treaties regarding genetic material and consent. We grant asylum to Ryan Foster, Cavallara, Theron, and the 3 hybrid children identified as Lily, Pedro, and Finn. Relief hit like a physical wave. The children cheered. Ryan pulled them into a hug. Cavallara stood very still, letting the reality sink in. They were safe. Finally, impossibly safe. The council leader continued. However, we must warn you. Asylum protects you here, but it does not erase the warrants for your arrest. If you leave Whisper's Edge, you will be subject to capture. You are trading freedom of movement for safety of place. Do you understand? We understand, Ryan said. Thank you. They left the council chamber and walked into bright sunlight. Cavallara spread her wings, feeling wind that wasn't filtered through ship recyclers or safe house ventilation. The children ran ahead, laughing, free in a way they'd never been. We did it, Ryan said quietly. Against all odds, we actually did it. Cavallara looked at him. We survived. Now we have to live. Yeah. He smiled, and it transformed his scarred face into something almost young. Let's go find a home. Together, family intact and future uncertain but hopeful, they walked into their new life on Whisper's Edge. 6 months on Whisper's Edge had transformed everything. The wounds, physical and mental, had begun to heal. The constant fear of pursuit had faded into something manageable. Life had found a rhythm that felt almost normal. Their home sat on the outskirts of a settlement called Harmony Point, a name that somehow fit despite being slightly too optimistic. The house itself was modest but comfortable. 3 bedrooms, a common area large enough for their makeshift family, and a yard where the children could play without fear. Cavallara had insisted on a reinforced security system. Some habits died hard. Ryan worked as a security consultant for local businesses, his military expertise valued even if his past couldn't be mentioned openly. The pay was decent. More importantly, the work let him sleep at night. No more morally questionable jobs. No more violence unless absolutely necessary. Cavallara had found purpose training the local militia. Many settlements on Whisper's Edge needed defense against raiders and pirates, but few had professional military experience. She taught combat tactics, strategic thinking, and how to work as a unit. Her reputation had spread. Dragonkin warrior teaching multi-species teams was unusual enough to draw attention. She also taught flight to avian species and anyone else with wings. Lily was her star pupil. The girl's wings had grown stronger over the months. She could glide now, and soon she'd be ready for true flight. Watching her soar even in short bursts filled Cavallara with pride she couldn't quite name. Pedro attended school with other children, finally among peers who didn't treat him like a freak. His reptilian features marked him as different, but different was normal here. Half his classmates were hybrid or mixed species. He'd made friends. Real friends who invited him to their homes and included him in games. Finn was thriving. The quiet, traumatized child they'd rescued was becoming talkative and curious. His aquatic features meant he spent hours at the local lake, swimming with others of water-going species. He'd started school last month and brought home drawings that covered the walls of their home. Each one showed their family, always together, always smiling. Theron had recovered fully from the addiction. The physical healing had been followed by psychological recovery, helped by counselors who specialized in trauma. He worked at a medical clinic now, using his experience with suffering to help others. He lived in a small apartment nearby, independent but still part of their lives. He joined them for dinner 3 times a week, and took the children on excursions to teach them about their dragonkin heritage. It was as close to normal as any of them had ever experienced. But normal was about to be disrupted. Ryan sat on the porch, watching the twin moons rise over the settlement. Cavallara joined him, 2 cups of tea in her hands. She passed him one and settled beside him in comfortable silence. "You're thinking about the message," she said finally. Ryan nodded. Hard not to. The message had arrived 3 days ago. A data package from an unknown source, heavily encrypted. Ryan's old military training had been necessary to crack it. Inside was a video message and a data file. Carter's face had filled the screen, but not the Carter they remembered. This man looked older, harder, with the haunted expression of someone who'd seen too much. His military insignia had been stripped from his uniform. The message was brief. "Ryan, I know where you are, but I'm not here to bring you in. I defected, took everything I could from the program files before I left. There are 17 more children, scattered across 3 facilities. I'm sending you their locations and security details. I can't save them. I tried and failed. But maybe you can. The data's clean. I made sure of that. Do what you think is right. I'll try to hold off the hunters as long as I can." Carter out. The data file contained everything he'd promised. Facility locations, guard schedules, information on each child, names, ages, abilities, pictures of faces that looked scared and hopeless. 17 children still trapped in the system they'd escaped. "We have to do something," Ryan said quietly. "We can't just ignore this, I know." Cavallara sipped her tea. "But we also can't risk everything we've built. The children are finally safe and happy. Theron is healing. We have a life here. A life built on being the lucky ones who escaped. What about those who didn't? You think I don't know that?" Cavallara's voice sharpened. "Every night I see their faces in those files. I know they're suffering. But we're 7 people. Even with help, we can't assault 3 military facilities. No, we can't, but we can do something. We have information. We have evidence. We can expose what's happening." Ryan had been working on that for the past 3 days, compiling everything they knew about the hybrid program, the genetic theft, the experimentation, the treatment of the children. Building a case not for the courts but for public opinion. The galactic news networks were hungry for scandal. A whistleblower story about military abuse of hybrid children, backed by documentation and testimony, would spread across systems. It wouldn't free the children immediately, but it would make their continued imprisonment impossible to ignore. "It puts us at risk," Cavallara pointed out. "Going public means revealing ourselves. We're already known. The military knows where we are. They just can't touch us because of asylum laws. But those laws don't stop information from leaving Whisper's Edge. And if exposing the program leads to backlash, if people decide hybrid children are abominations who deserve what's happening to them, then we fight that narrative. We show them what these kids are really like. Lily, Pedro, Finn, they're not monsters or experiments. They're just children who want to live." Cavallara was quiet for a long time. "You've already decided, haven't you?" "I've decided I can't stay quiet. But this affects all of us. We need to talk to the children. They deserve a say. They called a family meeting that night. Everyone gathered in the common area. Theron had come over when Ryan called. The children sat together on the couch, sensing the seriousness. Ryan explained everything. The message from Carter. The 17 children still trapped. The idea of going public with their story. The risks involved. I won't make this decision without you, he finished. This affects all of us. If we do this, there will be consequences, attention, possibly danger. You all need to understand what we're choosing. Lily spoke first. When we were in that facility, before you rescued us, I used to imagine someone would save us. Every day I hoped someone would care enough to help. You and Cavallara were our someone. Don't we owe those other kids the same chance? We're safe now, Pedro added. Maybe we can help make others safe too. Isn't that what you've been teaching us? That we stand up for what's right even when it's hard? Finn nodded vigorously. Help them. Like you helped us, Theron leaned forward. I spent months as a slave because nobody spoke up. Nobody exposed what was happening. If you have the means to reveal the truth, you have to try. Not just for those children, but because silence protects oppressors. Cavallara looked at each of them in turn. Her family. The people who'd become more important than her old life, her old pride, her old identity. If we do this, we can't turn back. Once the information is out, everything changes. Then everything changes, Ryan said. But at least we'll have tried to make the change mean something. They spent the next week preparing. Ryan worked with journalists he'd vetted carefully, providing documentation in stages, building the story piece by piece. Cavallara reached out to advocacy groups that worked on hybrid rights. Theron connected with medical professionals who could testify about the psychological harm of the program. The children recorded video testimonies. Lily spoke about her time in captivity. Pedro described the experiments. Finn simply asked why anyone thought hurting children was okay. The story broke on a Wednesday morning, carried by 3 major news networks simultaneously. Military hybrid program exposed. Children subjected to experiments and abuse. The documentation was thorough. The testimony was compelling. Within hours, it was the biggest story across a dozen systems. Reactions came swiftly. Outrage from civil rights groups, denials from military officials, calls for investigations, counter-arguments from those who believed hybrid children shouldn't exist at all. The public discourse was messy, angry, and exactly what they'd hoped for. Because noise meant visibility. Visibility meant oversight. And oversight meant the military couldn't quietly continue the program. Within 2 weeks, the first facility was shut down pending investigation. Within a month, all 3 facilities were under review. The children weren't freed immediately, but they were being moved to better conditions under independent monitoring. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. The exposure brought attention to Whisper's Edge, too. Journalists wanted interviews. Activists wanted to meet the family who'd sparked the controversy. Some of the attention was positive. Much of it was hostile. They received threats. Protesters appeared at the edge of their property, calling them criminals and worse. Ryan and Cavallara handled it together, taking turns dealing with the press while ensuring the children stayed safe. Theron moved back into the house temporarily, adding another layer of protection. The local community rallied around them. Neighbors they'd come to know standing between their family and those who wished them harm. 3 months after the story broke, they received word. Carter had been captured during a military raid. He'd bought them time just as he'd promised. He was facing charges of treason. Cavallara wanted to feel angry about his earlier role in hunting them, but all she felt was respect for his final choice. 4 months after the story broke, the first freed child arrived on Whisper's Edge. A young boy, human-feline hybrid, seeking asylum. The council granted it. He was placed with a foster family in Harmony Point. Then another arrived, and another. Children from the program, freed by the investigation, seeking the place they'd heard about where hybrid kids could live safely. Ryan and Cavallara found themselves at the center of a growing community. They couldn't take in every child, but they helped place them with families. They advocated for resources. They built support networks. Their mission had expanded beyond saving 3 children. Now they were working to change how the galaxy treated all hybrid children. One evening, 6 months after going public, Ryan found Cavallara on the porch again. The ritual had become tradition. End of the day tea, comfortable silence. We came together out of desperation, Ryan said quietly. You needed security. I needed someone to care for hybrid kids. Kvalara smiled slightly. That feels like a lifetime ago. We stayed together by choice, though. That's what matters. Yes. She looked at him. This scarred human warrior who'd risked everything for children that weren't his blood, who'd given up his old life to build something better, who'd somehow become the most important person in her world. I choose to stay. For them, for this, for us, Ryan echoed. Inside, they could hear the children laughing. Pedro was teaching Finn some complicated game. Lily was helping Theron prepare dinner. Normal family sounds, the kind they'd fought so hard to have. There's more work to do, Kvalara said. More children to help. More systems to change, and there always will be. But tonight we're here. We're safe. We're together. Is that enough? Ryan considered. It's everything. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. More children needing help. More people who opposed what they represented. More battles to fight, but they would face it together. As partners, as family, as people who'd chosen to make the galaxy better for those who had no other champions. A ship descended toward the spaceport, probably carrying another refugee seeking asylum. Kvalara made a note to check in tomorrow, see if they needed help getting settled. Come on, Ryan said, standing and offering his hand. Dinner's probably ready. Kvalara took his hand and let him pull her up. They walked inside together, leaving the porch and the stars and the vast galaxy behind to join their family in the warm light of home. This was what they'd fought for. Not grand victories or perfect solutions, just this. A home where children could laugh without fear. A place where being different was okay. A family built by choice and strengthened by love. The galaxy was vast and often cruel. But here in this small corner of space, they'd carved out something good. Something worth protecting. Something worth fighting for every single day. And that in the end was enough.